Congressman, during the debates, I've heard you speak about the need of new leadership in Washington. Getting new leaders into Washington, will that change the gridlock that seems it's gotten worse over the last 8 years or 4 years? Will that change anything? And if not, how will you help navigate that gridlock that seems to be ever present?
Karim, I think, I don't think new people per se fix necessarily anything. What I do think, though, is there's an evaluation as to the way in which hopefully some of those new participants will go about the job and the type of vision that they bring to it. The reason why I believe, one of the reasons why we have a childcare system that is so completely out of touch with the realities of working families, because we have an economy that requires mom and dad or both parents to be working, and yet nobody cares for the kids, is that for most of my colleagues, right, the folks that have been in charge for a long time, that wasn't the era that they were brought up in, or even the era that they raised their kids in, right? Dad worked, mom took care of the kids, and dad could earn enough to do that. That's not the reality anymore. And that's not the reality for a Democratic family. It's not the reality for a Republican family. Any younger member of Congress will tell you it's one of the biggest challenges we have. You got to travel a lot, but it's how do you possibly make this work with a family when somebody's away and the other partner has to be there for the kids and work, and all of a sudden you're looking at huge figures for childcare, and every other family has to deal with that. And so I think part of that is, and leaders that are more reflective of the economic realities of the day that have to figure out, one, how we're going to navigate through it. Two, I think there's fundamentally a different way, at least in this race and in others, in the way in which some of us view this job, which is to say that there's so much more to being a senator than just the votes that you cast and the bills that you file. And yes, the legislative part of this job, I'm not trying to diminish it, but it's just to say there is so much more that is needed and necessary in this moment than just that. There's the people you highlight, the places you go, the voices you lift up, how present you are in our communities. I don't think you can say that you're going to address the needs of our communities if you're not in our communities, if you don't have the credibility and the relationship with our community leaders on whatever the issue is, whether that's transportation or infrastructure or environmental justice or racial justice. If you don't know who the leaders of those and have a relationship with leaders of the faith community, how are you going to claim to actually push those issues forward? If you don't spend time out in Western Massachusetts or in communities like Chelsea and Roxbury and Mattapan. So I think that presence piece is critical. I think there's a relentlessness that's necessary, because even if you could craft the perfect piece of legislation, if Mitch McConnell's not going to let you pass it, then you got to go out there and build that movement, and you got to go around the country and do that so that we can in fact flip these chambers, whether it's the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And those positions give you an enormous platform to help influence it. And so the way that I view this position, and in particular one of being a United States Senator, is much more holistic, much more comprehensive, and requires a relentlessness on every aspect of that job to actually drive that change.